Hello and welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and in today's video we're going to continue on the build series of the Steady Rest to go in my Precision Matthews 1127 lathe. If you recall in the previous video, I made the base. Biggest part of that project, of course, was cutting this V in. Today I want to take this piece of stock. This is 1 inch by 6 inches wide by, let's see, by about 8.5 inches long. I've got it surface ground, got it polished up, ready to go. Before we start laying out the upright portion of the Steady Rest, so let me show you just a few pictures of what it took to get this piece of metal to the point that it's at now. First off, I had to cut it off of a long piece that I had. Again, this was a piece of material that I salvaged during the barn cleanup over at my sister's after my brother-in-law passed. It started out 1 inch by 6 inch by 6 foot long, which according to some online calculators, it should have weighed between 120 and 125 pounds. It had a piece of 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch stock welded to it that was just tack welded on. I cut some of those tack welds with the grinder and then sawed off this piece. After getting it sawed off using the portable bandsaw from each direction, I carried it over to the other side of the tin barn, used the angle grinder on it, and kind of cleaned some of the roughest rust spots off of it. From there, brought it in the mill, over to the mill, and using the outside jaws on the vise, clamped it in and milled each end of the workpiece. Then turned it up on the edge and milled both edges. I checked it for square, and it was as good as I think I can get it in any procedure. From there, I carried it over to the surface grinder and ground one side enough that I knew I had total flat surfaces. This back side, I didn't completely clean it up entirely, but it seemed to be, the piece seemed to be thicker, as much as about 30 thousandths thicker on each of the two edges that it was in the middle. But I got this side, got it cleaned up so that it set flat. There's a little spot right there where I cut the weld off, which is kind of deep, but I didn't try to surface grind it all the way down to a bare surface. But then I flipped it over and did this side down to the bare surface. And here's one final shot of what it looked like after doing that work prep on it. What I want to do today is this CAD design here, cardboard aided design. I want to try to cut this out of this workpiece. Okay, I put a lot of thought into this as far as what should come first. Doing the rough cuts out on this, cutting the hole, or just what order of operations. But I think what I need to do is, while this still has good flat edges, is cut the hole in the middle. We'll do that on the lathe. And I'm sure somebody's going to say, well, why don't you trepan it off? Folks, I've got a 11 inch lathe. This is not one of the big, huge lathes that you see some of the other guys have. Plus, this material is 1 inch thick. I don't think I can make a trepanning tool that would go through 1 inch on my lathe without breaking it. So we're gonna set this up in a 4-jaw chuck. I'll drill it out to 1 inch. That's the largest bit I've got. Then we'll bore it out to the 3-inch. I'm actually making this one a little bigger than the original was. The original was about 2.5-inch opening, and across the outside about 4 3/4. We're going to make this a 3-inch opening and the outside to 5.5 inches. Before I can bore this though, we need to find the exact position of it. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and lay out some Dykem on this piece and this piece. Then I'll meet you over on the lathe and show you how I think I can find where the center of this hole should be. Alright, to get the height of the center line on the lathe, I've got our workpiece from the previous video, the base. Got it sitting across the ways. We'll take our height gauge again and zero that out. Alright, that's at 0 now. And we'll come up and line our pointer up. Alright, I think that's center there now. And we read our dial. We're at 4.567. 4.567. Okay, that's our height. I've just made a note of that. Now we need to find the center line. If I thought enough ahead when I built this piece in the last video, I wouldn't have drilled that hole. I drilled it to match the original base. And I think it's off center just a little bit. But of course, the only purpose of that hole is to clamp it in here. But what I'm saying is I can't use that hole to necessarily determine the center. So I'm going to use a couple machinist squares here. Get this positioned up. And what I'm going to do is get that edge of that square in line. Then I'll take this smaller square. Let me get a scribe handy. And just lightly touch it up to that. Get this out of the way. Not sure how well it shows in the camera, but this looks like it. Whew, how clear that looks, mighty close to center. We're going to use this center line in any case to line up with our top piece. So let's turn back over to the workbench now and lay out this center height, or this height here, centering this up on our workpiece, new workpiece. Okay, remember on our height gauge, we came out with 4.567. So I've got that set on the calipers now. And we'll just put us a little witness mark right there. Now let's take our square and just reinforce that mark just a little bit. This is going to be a little less than 6 now, since of all the cleanup. And that is 5.838. 5.838. 2.919. Alright, I'm going to mark that at the ends. I want a good indication of that center line down here. That's what we'll use to line this piece up when we get ready to lay out. Right now, all we're interested in is where those two cross. Alright, we'll take our center punch. That's a good mark, but let's emphasize it just a little bit more. Alright, that'll give us something to line up with on the lathe. I'm going to put the 4-jaw chuck in the lathe now. And I'm going to try this without trying to balance it yet. Remember, this piece will be, this template, something to this effect. So there's right much that'll be cut out over here. Like I say, I'm going to set this up in the lathe, in the 4-jaw. Alright, I know this will be off balance, but I'm going to set it up in the 4-jaw chuck and see just how much it shakes the lathe. If it's too much, we'll come back and trim a little bit of this out just to get rid of some of this weight. Okay, going to have to drop back 10 and punt. I was going to set this up in the 4-jaw chuck and go ahead and bore out this hole. I got the 4-jaw chuck installed on the lathe, got the outside jaws in, but they will not open wide enough for this. My lathe is 11-inch lathe, and if you go from that center to here, we're almost on 5.5, which would be the limit. But the problem is it won't open up wide enough. So we're going to go ahead and lay out basically the same as this template. Trim some off the end down here, and maybe even go ahead and notch this out. And that should get it to where it'll fit in the lathe. So the first thing we want to do is take our set of dividers. The inside hole is 3 inches, so we'll set this up at 1.5 inches. And this is just sanity marks right here. Alright, the outside is 5.5. Half of that is 2.75. Didn't quite get enough dicum over here. But as you can see, we've got about 1 inch we can cut off this end, which would probably give us enough space. But let's come down here now, and on this template, if we take our base piece and put the center mark of it, I shouldn't have been so stingy with the dicum. Set that. Alright. Now, when I drew up this template, I determined this to be about a 20-degree angle. Should work fine. Then I believe I stepped over 1 inch. Now we'll go to the other side. Be sure I was set right correctly on that. Now I want to take out or mark out for this little section right here. Again, to give some room for the jaws. So we'll come up, I believe I come up about 1 inch there. Okay, so the area we're going to take out now, we're going to come up here. I'm just going to give myself plenty of room right there. We're going to pretty much saw a line. I tell you what, on this end, we're going to saw that line straight. I'll have to come back and saw more later. But I need to keep some extra weight on this end. And then down here, we're going to take out this area right here. And might even take some of this out. So I'm going over to the bandsaw and cut that. That's going to take a little bit. I'm not going to try to video any of that. But after I get this cut off here, get this section out, and maybe a little bit of this weight relief here, I'll probably set it up in the mill and make this flat across here. I'll bring you back when we get to a bit more interesting part. Okay, I got about an inch cut off of this end down here. And that left about, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch off the outside of our circle. Also down here on this end, I cut a couple wedges out to get to this bottom line right here. I'd like, when I mill that out, I'd like for that to be a finished surface. So while I've still got good square flats on this end, I'm going to turn this up in the vise and mill this end straight again. And the only reason I'm doing that, all this is going to go away, but I want this flat so when I turn it over, I can get a finish on that recess that we're cutting in there. All right, that should have our relief to its bottom. These edges will be cleaned up more when we get to the rotary table. But I think we're ready now to go back to the bandsaw, take these corners right here off right quick, and then set up in the lathe and finally drill our hole. All right, off camera, I tried the piece in here knowing it was going to be out of balance, but just see how bad it shook the lathe. And it could have got pretty violent if I let the RPMs get up. So I carried it back over to the bandsaw
and cut out one of these corners first. That helped a little, so I went back and cut the other one out, and it was still just a little bit out of balance. So I put this weight on this side over here. I had room in the jaws after I cut this out. I had enough room over here with this jaw to put that in. So I've got it reasonably close now. But what I'm going to do is bring the, take my dead center. Now we'll bring that in, and all I'm doing is going in until the dial is at 0 here. Okay, I've got these two opposing jaws now within 1/1000th of each other. So let's try these two now. Now I'll continue that process and keep switching back and forth between the two of them, between the 4 jaws, until I have 0 on all of them. Alright, I've got reading within 1/2,000th all the way around, so I think that's about as center as we're going to get it. So we'll get all this out of the way, put our drill chuck in, and finally drill and bore the center hole. Okay, as I said in the previous video, the way I crashed the steady rest before was I had it in between the carriage here and the chuck, and I got distracted and let this run too far, and it pushed the steady rest into the chuck, which is what broke it. Now, to help prevent crashing anything this time, I've set my carriage stop down here. I've set it at the point and got it locked down, which is the furthest point that I can bring this up without this counterweight or these legs striking the carriage itself. So that's as far up as I can go. All right, let's start our drilling process. I'm going to start with a center drill, and then I'm going to step drill it up probably 4 times up to 1 inch. Alright, I believe that 1 inch drill probably needs to have a good sharpening before I try to use it again. So let's go ahead and start with the boring bar. Okay, I used my 1/2 inch boring bar and got the hole cleaned out good. Couldn't quite get through it with the 1 inch, that dull 1 inch bit. So I cleaned it out enough with this 1/2 inch one to the point that I can get my larger 3/4 inch boring bar in. Now, what I've done, remember we scribed a circle on here to size over on the workbench. I pulled my cross slide back to that edge, to that mark we made, and zeroed out my DRO. So we're going to keep working our way this way until we get to that zero. We got a lot of boring out to do here. I'm going to take about 60 thousandths on each cut to bring that out. Alright, that boring bar is doing real good. I think this might be the first time I've used this larger boring bar on anything other than aluminum. I'm going to get the coolant set up on it. It's throwing some pretty hot chips out of there. May even set up a guard. But I'll bring you back when we get a little closer to the outside edge. All right, we got about one more 60 thousandths cut, and then just a small amount to get it to the 3-inch, which the 3-inch is not, doesn't have to be exact. This has been cutting real good. I'm really happy with this boring bar. It's making good chips. But with this whole setup, with the this sticking out here with this extra weight here, counterweight, and these arms over here, it's been flinging them chips everywhere. We're making, after a round or two, it gets this little, I'm not even sure what you'd call that, but it kind of pushes into itself. But for the most part, we're getting nice chips being created. I tried to use the coolant, but it slung that coolant everywhere. So I've just been taking it kind of slow. We'll take another 60 thousandths right quick. All right, I'm going to make a spring cut here. And I believe that cleaned up good enough not even to need a spring cut. As you can see, what it did was about halfway through it started making that. I'm not sure what kind of chip you call that, but at least it didn't sling it everywhere. All right, let's get a measurement. 2.985. So we got about 15 more thousandths to go. I think this cut right here will be plenty sufficient. All right, let's take this off. Remember, I got the carriage stop set down here to keep the compound cross slide from going in too far. Not sure I've got a bit long enough to reach, or got one set up long enough to reach. Instead of taking a chance of trying to stick something in there to counterbore or to chamfer this edge and that edge on the inside, I think I'm just going to chamfer that with the file. Guys, I had hoped to get a whole lot further on this project today in this video than I did. This took considerably more time getting it balanced and getting everything set up than I had anticipated. So I'm going to bring this video to a close now.
In the next one, we'll set up the rotary table on the mill and get this cut out to our dimensions around here. And hopefully we'll have time as well to cut the slots and put the fingers in. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.